Hi, welcome to the Scrapyard. I'm your host, Nathan Mulepolder. Here with Taylor.
I hate May.
And Xavier.
When I play Reinhardt, I'm a feeder.
Today, we're talking about Overwatch League. Specifically, our expectations for the next stage, news from the offseason, and our team picks for Overwatch League. If you want to find our social media, check out Scrapyard Media on Instagram and Twitter. There will be a link to our Discord in the description below.
No Facebook, because it's for old people.
That is correct.
Roll intro!
You come from a land down under. Women go and men wonder.
Okay, let's hop right in with our expectations for the next stage. How do you guys feel about the champions? Well, not the champions, but Vancouver and Shock.
I expect that Vancouver will be basically the same. I don't think there's going to be a lot of difference. Even if meta changes, they're still going to be a very strong team. And I just think that once, you get a snowball like that rolling, it's not going to change much. There's a reason they won. There's a reason why, even though they did face some struggles, there is a reason why that they went a full 7 games against the Shock and still won. They're a powerhouse to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I think they're never gonna miss the playoffs. They're always gonna be just good. There no roster changes, no people taking time off. They are just rolling this back. It's only been 2 weeks, so it's not like it's this long off season where they can get cold. They're still a hot team, so I think they're just gonna continue on through. But with the Shock, I believe their story is a lot more interesting than Vancouver, because Vancouver's just rolling this roster back. They're the champions. They're feeling good. But I wonder how the Shock are gonna rebound after Rialto, because after they gave up that world record Vancouver push, the Shock just looked dejected. They played scared. You could tell that they were mentally defeated. So I wonder how they're gonna kind of come back from that, because that's something that's hard to come back
I think
from.
Shock is a very young team. I think they're emotional. I think they need to focus more on how young so many members of the team are, to allow them to not get stuck in that once they start losing or giving up dumb decisions, which you could tell on their faces they gave up some really dumb spots and choices and ults. You can just tell that it really impacted a bunch of the younger members. Not so much it affected the whole team, but you could see that it affected Sinatra, Super, all of the really young players a lot more than maybe Moth, who just seemed irritated with the fact that he knew that they could have won.
And I think if Goats isn't the meta, the hard meta it was in stage 1, but if it kind of softens up and allows more DPS play,
Yeah.
I wonder how the Shock are going to adjust to that, because I believe that one of their big advantages was that Sinatra stepped into that Zarya role perfectly, and he was the best Zarya in the league, and he stepped into that role, while other DPS players, Soon, even Carpe and Equo, just kind of struggled to their new roles. Mm-hmm. And if it goes back to where these DPS players get to play what they're special in, I wonder if the Shock will kind of lose that advantage of actually having a competent Zarya in that position where other teams had okay Zaryas, but weren't excellent. And so I wonder if that's going to be an adjustment, assuming Goats isn't just the powerhouse meta.
Yeah,
assuming there's
sure,
a little
of
more
course.
diversity.
Speaking of other teams, is there any other teams you guys are thinking about improvements they can make or anything like that?
I think Chengdu, the Hunters, I think they're a really strong team. They're the most interesting. They came in knowing that the meta was this 3 tanks, the Goats meta, and they came in with some really weird team comps, and I do think that there's times where they stayed on the team comp, a weird team comp a little too long, and that they should have probably switched, should have probably changed it up, but they knew how to play tanks. They showed that at the end. They have some really strong players like Keo and Elsa, which was their flex player, Bacon Jack, who came from, he knows the assistant coach. They came from the same League of Legends like background, and it's surprising because also their head coach used to be the Shanghai Dragons coach. So to see how he's changed going over to a whole different team has been really nice, and seeing how they have grown and he has grown as a coach.
Yeah, and I know everybody like loves Ameng, and he's like, you know, oh my god, Ameng, and he's like this huge, you know, huge fan favorite, but he feeds a lot.
Yeah,
like, he dies a lot, and it might just be he's a little bit, you know, exuberant and over exuberant as Hammond, but I think if you die that much, that's something that needs to be fixed, because in a lot of this clutch situations, he was the one that made a mistake, like against Vancouver.
Yeah, but also they are changing how Hammond is. He's a little bit more beefy, maybe. It might help a little bit more now having, you know, more shield on that character, because even any good Hammond player could get easily just like shredded because he wasn't as beefy as the rest of the tanks.
Yeah, he needs to be a lot more careful because he does feed a lot, and it's a huge issue, especially if you get to these upper echelons. If you lose your main tank, like, first go, it's like, all right, what do we do?
First push, and, you know, Ameng is already half health, and the rest of the team hasn't even pushed in yet.
Yeah, and he needs to get better at
comes.
Reinhardt. Like, I know he kind of smashed Bumper that one game.
Yeah.
But if you look at just his overall season as the times he's played Reinhardt, it hasn't really been excellent, you know, and he really needs to improve that because he is right now kind of just a handle.
But he is a good in other forms. He does know how to play a shield tank, at least basics, because he also played a little bit of Orisa. So I think,
you know who doesn't have the basics down? Washington Justice. Now, I hope you're watching this, Washington. You might be. So Washington Justice has this coach, wizard. He's not a wizard. He's a self-proclaimed genius. He's apparently this genius level coach. When I think of genius coaches, I think of Greg Popovich, Bill Belichick. You know, these Coach K. These coaches that can take any roster. You can have superstars. You could just have really good role players.
average players even.
And you can elevate those players to a high level. You know, Greg Popovich could take us three and like Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili to the NBA playoffs.
Sure. Yeah.
And so Wizard, he's a genius coach.
A genius.
Yes, he is Janus, and Janus is cool.
Yeah.
He's a good player. He's a good tank. They just traded for Arc. Mm-hmm. Washington's problems is partially talent, but its majority
Coaching.
of the problem is coaching. Because if you look at how they play, what are they doing? They play defense scared.
They play
And
offense
Yes.
scared.
And in GOATs, if you're playing defense, it's an aggressive style of defense.
Yeah.
You know, New York, they play a passive, kind of defensive, very like, all right, let's wait our time. But they have a bunch of the best players in the league. This is a coaching issue.
I think also the issue with Washington is that unlike a lot of the other teams you see, where it's like, oh, we have these ults, we have these things, they're not as patient. They just kind of start throwing things in. Like, they'll do really weird pushes and they won't use their ults in the right way.
Yes, and so what I'm looking for in Stage 2 is for this genius coach to actually show some of that genius and maximize his talent.
Sure. Speaking of using ults strangely, I want to talk about Florida and Atlanta. Florida and Atlanta, they're not one place, obviously.
That'd be a party place.
That'd be interesting. So, I have a couple of things to say. First of all, individually, a lot of the players on Florida actually aren't that bad. They make a lot of good solo plays. Like, we have Hagupen on Volskaya with that sleep on a Tracer out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And, you know, stuff like that. Or the Lucio boop on... what's the map's name? Nimbani.
But they're all proven players.
They're all good players. But together, they're like a bunch of solo players playing together. They're like a bunch of, like, Stephen Currys on one team. Mm-hmm. And, like, but not in a good way, you know? They all want to be making the threes. None of them are making the threes. Because you have BQB's, EMP, and Tvik. They tried to combo on Hollywood. to Vic, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Get at us on Twitter.
But that combo just didn't come through because, you had Kodak as Zenny coming in to save with the Transcendence, which I feel like Kodak needs some love because he's a great Zenny player. I feel like he doesn't get enough love. And you know what? The best thing I saw, I have to say, from Florida was the apply feed from Genji against Houston. Like, that was like some stuff you'd see in an edit somewhere with cool, like techno music in the background. That was an amazing feed of kills, and just, not enough love there. But again, it's just these solo players doing really good. On the other hand, Atlanta has a lot of potential, especially in their supports. Their supports do amazing plays. They know how to stack their ults just in time with each other to just keep rolling and rolling. And I think if anyone has a chance to improve, or had a chance to improve in the second stage, it was Atlanta, and then DeFran left.
Yeah. Atlanta's a very, feast or famine team. They're either going to destroy you, or they're going to, get O forward.
I'm really excited to see how Atlanta works in the next, stage.
It'll be a great stage, too.
And I hope Florida pulls it together for the next stage. I doubt they will.
Hope they go
but
on
right
win
now, let's hear from our sponsors. And let's get right into the news. How do you feel about Moon being fired, Xavier?
Sick Keemstar joke, bro. Moon getting fired is a weird decision. It feels very, traditional sportsy. It's like the Cavs, they fired Tyronn Lue after they went, I think they went 0-7. Mm-hmm. And they fired him after they got rid of LeBron because they're like, oh, well, it's clearly the coach's issue, when it's you just lost your best player issue. You know what I mean? And I think this Moon seemed like he kind of needed to be fired. I felt like they needed a coaching change. They did bench Custa. And they had Custa, let me just double check, Kuki playing Lucio instead of Custa playing Lucio. And kind of the rationale behind that was that Custa's shot calling was just too 800 IQ or something for the rest of the team. And that's a weird decision. He's your best shot caller.
It was the fact, if I remember, it was the fact that Custa knows the game too well.
Yeah. And
Custa knows the game. He knows how to play the game. And they're like, get him out of here.
And I mean, at that point, just hire Custa as your coach.
Right, and it's like, if you're a coach, part of being a coach is managing personalities.
Yeah.
And so if Custa, I understand if there's frustration with Custa calling all these weird plays and the team is like, dog, what are you talking about? We don't know this. That's when you step in as a coach and say, hey, Custa, I get that your brain is kind of working fast and you're calling out these plays, but let's simplify this and kind of help the rest of the team understand. You don't just bench him and have a tank play Lucio.
Yeah.
Kuki has not been good as Lucio, and it's not like the LA Valiant are garbage team.
They're not a bad team. They're not a bad team at all.
They're solid.
They weren't losing.
They never got O forward.
They
that's
never got O forward. They weren't losing. You can watch plenty of games and you're like, wow, this team, how are they 0-7? A lot of the early games you're like, how are they 0-7? And it's like the further you go into stage 1, you realize, well, it's probably because they got this tank on Lucio and they have their best shot caller on the bench, and it's just all
there's issues with ult management, and it's just a lot of things that kind of show that it's a coaching issue. Because these aren't issues with the players. Because last season, it's relatively the same.
I don't think it's issues with the players. Because you bring up coaching issues, and it reminds me something I meant to mention with Florida is that the real difference between Florida and Atlanta, if you look at them, and the difference between some of these teams is just the mentality of them. Because it comes back to Shock too. When Shock took that hit on Rialto, their just morality dropped, and you can see in the games with people like Florida and Atlanta. I'm sorry, I keep referencing them. It was a weird match, but it was fun to watch, kind of. First thing they mention when Atlanta walks out is their main focus is mental health, and I feel like that needs to be a focus of a lot more of the teams, and that would improve them a lot.
Yeah, and I think that kind of bounces off of the reported issues of LA Valiant having issues with their Western and Korean players kind of meshing,
I think
and like these cultural issues.
I think there's a couple of things, like where you look at some of the chemistry between players when they're not in the match. If you follow any group on social media, you can see like again with the Shock, they're very close. They'll spend time like hanging out. They'll do like ping pong matches. They'll do a lot of fun things together. And like for a lot of the teams, like the only time I see them not like in their houses or like practicing or just streaming like is like during the off season, where there'd be like a lot of teams went to Disneyland, a lot of teams went to Universal, some teams went to like, you know, Malibu and like the beaches and all that, and they did like all these kind of things. And I don't think that some of the teams are getting these like nice breaks. Like,
but I think the Valiant are trying a little bit with that roster. They did like, there were rumors of trades, talks between Boston and LA Valiant, and the Valiant were trying to get fusions, and I think that's an interesting move. They didn't get fusions, the trade talks fizzled, but trying to get fusions, I feel like it somewhat signifies that they might be leaning towards like the Western side of their locker room and being like, all right, let's focus on this and kind of trade some of our not Western players, but they're trying to improve their roster. Like, getting fusions is a big get. But, you know, those talks kind of fizzled. And now, I don't know where their moves are trying to go. Like, what other players are trying to get.
they seem very uncertain with all.
Everything's just
It's very
uncertain. Yeah.
uncertain. It's very like in a cloud. It's very like, what is Valiant doing? Because like last year, they were such a like,
Good.
they were such a hard team. Like, they were such a solid team.
Yeah.
And now, like, this year, just to see them, like, go 0-7, like, 0-7, like, it's very weird. I feel like a lot of it is chemistry. There's not enough chemistry. Maybe they don't, like, there's bad locker room, kind of.
It's a weird kind of feel between them. And one move that I do like, and just to kind of move on to another topic, just briefly, the Boston Uprising trying to get Crystal from Hangzhou Spark. Those are the kind of moves I like, because Crystal, I didn't really know Crystal before like he came up in trade talks, but if you like look at some of his YouTube highlights, the motherfucker is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, he is good.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
can kill stuff, and I think looking at Hangzhou's bench and being like, Crystal, like, this is the dude we can get, it shows that Boston isn't complacent. They made the playoffs, they were first round exit, and it shows that Boston is actively trying to improve their roster and are, you know, kind of looking forward and looking at these players that are underutilized and being like, boom.
I feel like out of all of the teams, I hear Boston Uprising always being the center of the trade talks. They're always like the first name you hear, like when it's like we're trading, it's always like Boston Uprising. It's either Boston Uprising or it's either of the Texas teams.
And that's like a good or a bad thing, because it's like, if you're constantly trying to like move your roster around, every trade kind of has to be a big impact, because if you whiff on a trade, it's gonna like mess up your locker room. It's gonna mess up like team culture. It's gonna mess up chemistry. You know what I mean?
Totally. It's like economics. You know, your marginal returns. Is it better to get this one new player to keep your old ones?
Yeah. So it's like, if you're getting a player, every trade needs to be a hit. You can't mess up on this. You know what I mean? And with that kind of like that team chemistry thing, I was thinking of like Dufran leaving, and how it's gonna like.
Dufran was the front, like he was
the face.
He was the face of Atlanta Reign.
The face of the Overwatch League.
Yeah,
and he had the number one selling jersey.
He had the number one. Yeah,
he's ultra popular. You know,
he's ridiculous.
He is a full-time partner with like their Atlanta Reign streaming.
So he's around. You know,
he's around, but like he was like going into this second season of Overwatch League, he was the face of Overwatch League. Much like last year, there was like, you know, it was like, this is
like Jonak.
Yeah,
like, he was kind of the
inaugural
face,
season. There's Jonak. There's all these things. Yeah, I feel like now the league doesn't have like that face without being like.
Who do you think could replace him?
Who would replace
Yeah,
him?
like who could be the face? Like, because I'm thinking, like you're losing somebody that's so known. You know what I mean? Like everyone knows DeFran.
Feel like I can't make that decision because I have like that gut feeling that they'll do like the first couple of weeks they'll start being like, you should really start watching out for like, I don't know, Architect or somebody like really weird, and that will start slowly becoming the face.
No, I think you can't really decide who's going to be like the face until you see playing and see kind of how people are reacting at first. DeFran definitely is like an interesting loss, but it does go back to that whole the mental health thing, because I assume he didn't have really, and a lot of people assumed he wasn't going to make it even through the first stage. But he did. But I think it's good that he's able to still keep ties with Atlanta Reign and still be friendly, but also take a step back and kind of go to a kind of cooler, chiller sort of style.
I could see him
play.
coming out of retirement.
It does.
At like one point in time, show up.
Definitely, he could definitely come out of retirement. It'd be great.
It does suck that like he didn't get to play in the meta that he is good at. Like,
I can see if like him coming out of retirement, if his meta ever came back, boom, put him in.
Even if it was like just a game.
The seconds we saw him as Tracer was like, oh my god, dude, this is what you're capable of.
Yeah.
And he was just like locked down on like Zarya duty, and that's kind of the one big casualty of GOATs is like all these crazy DPS players are like, all right, you're on Zarya and Brig, and it's like, damn, dude,
which I want to mention, which was something one of the commenters said. I don't remember who, but they said they wish to see Overwatch League get to the point where like each map has that like the set meta. Like
that makes sense.
Not like every single map we're gonna see GOATs. They're like, it'd be really nice to see like on, I don't know, Oasis, like this is the GOATs map. And then so when they trade in people, it's not like requiring somebody who is on the bench that's like, oh, really good, like, I don't know, Tracer or a really good anything else coming in and having to still fulfill one of those like, you have to be Zarya role.
That makes sense.
I feel like it would be really nice to see it the other way.
For sure.
And another mess.
He has been broken, so we'll have another message from our sponsors. Maybe this one is like Auto Trader or something. I don't know.
I don't know.
Let's see.
O'Reilly Auto Parts, maybe. Welcome back. I'm back up and running, and we are going to be talking about our all-team picks for Overwatch. First up, we have Xavier's Super Serious team.
All right. So I did the All-Overwatch team very seriously. I crunched data, went through the game. Unlike these two bozos. Love you.
No.
So
Rude.
for my DPS, I went with Sominsu and Sinatra as my two DPS for my All-Overwatch team. They're the two best Zaryas. Zarya is the most potent damage dealer in GOATs. I feel like this is self-explanatory.
Zarya is.
Yeah,
I agree.
and Sinatra was the highest
The
damage
salt in
dealer, and the second highest damage dealer was Sominsu. And Sominsu was a little bit better on some of like the advanced stats.
Yeah.
So I had him ranked kind of above Sinatra, but they're both the best DPS from stage 1, like just straight up. Support was a little contentious. There are a lot of good support players. I'm a little biased towards Zenyatta play.
Mm-hmm.
So I went with Violet and Jonak. Jonak is self-explanatory.
Jonak is
He's
god?
the reigning league MVP.
He's a god.
Even when they lose, he's plays out of his mind.
Where Sinatra is the god of Zarya, Jonak is the god of Zenyatta.
Yeah, Jonak he's self-explanatory. But Violet, I picked Violet as my second support because I believe he's right next to Jonak.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe slightly under, but I feel like he's right next to Jonak. His mechanical skill is ridiculous. If you kind of watch him, he's a potent player. He's not as violent of a player as Jonak is, but he's pretty damn violent.
Oh no, he's harsh.
And I believe that the Shock kind of rely on his skill and ability to time those transcendences perfectly, to help with the damage, to really shot call.
And the little time we saw him this last stage, like he was doing a lot.
No, he's incredible.
A lot.
He's
for
incredible.
Shock.
So I had him as my second support. It's close. There are a lot of good supports. I'll get to them later. Then for my tanks, I had Michelle and Janu. Michelle just stands out all the time. Whenever I watch the Seoul Dynasty, I feel like Michelle is doing something really, really nice. I feel like a lot of people won't agree with me with this Michelle pick. But Michelle has kind of been one of my favorite tanks to watch. And I feel like he kind of makes what the Seoul Dynasty does work.
Mm-hmm. He's
a playmaker. When you need somebody to make plays, he makes plays. And then Janu, I mean, oh my god, he's the best diva in the league. He just gobbles up.
He just gobbles.
Gobbles up graviton surges. He's like right up there with Choyobin. And then I think Janu is
hungry.
Yeah, and he's
a big hungry
involved
boy.
in everything. Everything that the Vancouver Titans do, he's in there. You know, Bumper's over here having a fight. Janu's like, bam, right over there.
Mm-hmm.
The support line's getting attacked. Janu's boom, right over there. Like he's like the glue that kind of just brings everyone together. Like he's just so good.
He's really good.
I have a couple honorable mentions. Shaz from the LA Gladiators. I really love watching him play. I feel like he's one of the best supports out there. He gets a lot of recognition. He's just kind of stuck on a middling team right now.
Mm-hmm.
But once they make the playoffs next stage, everyone's going to be like, Shaz is a god, Shaz is a god. Shu is kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's underrated. But I think once the Charge make the playoffs, everyone will recognize that Shu is a really good player. I need to watch a little bit more of him just to kind of get a feel for like a lot of his plays, but from what I've seen of him, he's really good. AKM, I respect how he stepped into the Zarya role, and he ended up being a very good Zarya. He's one of the best DBS players in the league.
I respect him in the fact that like he was clowned on.
Yes.
So much, and now he's really stepped up,
Mm-hmm.
and he's shown that he is worth like everything.
Yeah, he's
like,
not a soldier. He's not a soldier one trick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Slime. I needed to get a Lucio player in here, and I think Slime is one of the most fun Lucio players to watch. I don't know much about Lucio. You know, he's a little tanky. And so I think Slime is another player that kind of makes the whole Vancouver thing work, especially in GOATs. Lucio's the most important dude. He's a Yaki, stuck on a trash team, very good player. He's like Kyrie Irving in Cleveland. Just a very good player, and you know sometimes he messes up, but I think he's right up there. You know, right up there. And then Gushui. He's a name that I feel like is always brought up as like, you know,
that dude.
Yeah, like a really good player, and he's also stuck on like a team that's just like.
You kind of say he's like the Keanu Reeves of Overwatch League. Like he doesn't get as much recognition as you'd think, but he's like really good.
Yeah. Like I'm waiting for Gushui to have his John Wick moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like once he gets his John Wick moment, like he's in that ass, you know?
Yeah.
But Gushui, you know, he ranks at the top of a lot of statistical categories, you know, for tank. So I think Gushui is another one of those dudes that's like, once he gets that playoff spotlight, and you know he's in those big games that everyone's watching. You know, he's gonna be one of like the top dudes, I think.
Next up, we have Taylor's dream meme team.
Oh, it's the dream meme team. So my DPS would be Jake from the Houston Outlaws, but he can only play Junkrat. That's it, only Junkrat. Defran, because I need a big name to be the face of my team.
I was gonna say, how is Defran a meme?
He's a lit bruh.
He is the meme.
Yo. I'm gonna show you on Twitter. Defran is like the memeiest of memes. There's that. Yo. But I mean, because like, this is a video podcast, I'm gonna put up the Defran memes on them.
No, well, because I don't mean like him himself is a meme. I mean like other people you have on this list do weird things in game.
Yeah,
he went Torb his first game in the Overwatch League, dog.
But it worked.
He
got a pick on a Winston.
I am a big lover of anyone who plays Torbjorn. Okay. My supports would be Neptuno and Jonak. Jonak because he's a god, and Neptuno because he's a battle mercy, and he's just a battle support in general. My tanks would be Bumper because he's a super aggressive Reinhardt, and I think that matches really well with Aming as a super, you know, hamster boy.
Just think, like Aming like repelling and then dropping down and then Bumper doing like a 360 shatter.
Oh I think about how quickly
I
think about how quickly this team literally loses their tanks. And how it's a true test of how well the support line is.
You know, really, at that point, DeFran's just tanking as Torbjorn.
Yeah, no.
Bastion's a tank. I mean, he could go Bastion.
Yeah, he could go Bastion. Bastion is my favorite tank character, so
It's the perfect team, in my opinion.
It's a wonderful team.
Okay, now we have my team. So I picked all these. Well, I picked one person because they're amazing at their role, and I feel like the team needs to at least have some function. Both my DPSs, you know, I chose for function. I'll start from tanks. I'll work backwards. I'll go the opposite of what everyone else has done. So I picked Fusions, because he's not on Fusion. No other reason besides he plays a tank, and I like his name. McGravy, I went with McGravy because that is a very clever name. McGravy is probably a very humorous person to meet, and again, a tank player. You know, he didn't get a lot of play, if any play.
Yeah, he got play, but I don't know if he play.
But he didn't play.
I forget he plays sometimes.
Moving on to my supports, we got Kodak, which I mentioned earlier for his plays on Atlanta. He is really good, you know, Tranquilities. I love a Zenyatta player. Then we got the big heckin' chonker, Big Goose.
That's a big goose.
Say heckin' chonker.
That's not a reference to him as a person. That's a reference to his name. Big Goose. In that respect, Slime is an honorable mention here because Goo and Slime go together. DPS, I have Sinatra because, you know, I want a DPS player. He's very flexible, does a lot of good things, and I like the name. I like Sinatra. He's young. He's intelligent.
Flexible.
Can I cut in before you tell your
No.
last
I
DPS?
mean, we're running out of time here, and
Hey man, we got ads to run.
we got ads to run. We got, you know,
Ads to run.
I just like to say, you know, my last pick is the most functional. We got EFB.
Who does he play for?
God, what team is it? I think it's Soul. I know he plays like the ninja. He does a lot of like unlock fades.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
EFB.
Genji?
I get like I guess
right.
he gets deflections. The bleed damage off the deflection he's really good with. He does a
talking
lot of
about
the
Hanzo?
unlock. No, Hanzo doesn't have. Who's Hanzo? Which one's Hanzo? Hanzo's the bow guy, right?
Yeah, bow guy.
Yeah, no. So EFB, he does a lot of good unlocks. Wrong game, my bad. Okay, so if you want to find our social medias, you can look us up at Scrapyard Media on Instagram or Twitter. Link to the Discord in the description below, down there. Be safe. See you next time in the Scrapyard.
Bye.
Roll outro.
You come from a land down under.